Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Weiss, co-chair of Steptoe's International Trade Policy Practice and lead of the firm's supply chain team. Welcome to Supply Chain University, where we dive into the legal, policy, and advocacy issues involving supply chains. To find out more, visit our website at steptoe.com. In this episode, we're talking with Helle Hammer, the Managing Director of the Nordic Association of Marine Insurers, otherwise known as C4 in the industry. He's also chair of the policy forum for AAMI, the International Union of Marine Insurance. And Helle's going to be talking about the role of marine insurers in the global supply chain and the decarbonization of shipping. So Helle, thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you at Supply Chain University.
Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to it.
So why don't we start off with AAMI? Can you tell our viewers what is AAMI? Can you provide some background?
All right. AAMI is the global industry trade body, I guess, for marine insurers, for the national marine insurance associations and the market associations. So it is truly global. It works as our voice on all policy-related issues globally. We do some education work for the membership, raise the awareness about issues, and also have some statistics. So that is the voice to go to. Mainly focused on the assets, whether it's cargo, hull and machinery, or on the offshore energy units as well.
And what role do marine insurers play in the global supply chain?
Well, marine insurance is really a byproduct of trade and shipping activities and globalization, if you like. It enables and supports the movement of goods through a transfer of risk. So basically, to an owner, it's a risk management tool. We're there to offer the financial protection that they need. I mean, if you look at yourself as a homeowner, you will have insurance to cover that in case you had a fire in your own home, and the same goes with owners. And that's been the case for years and years. And I think the first, if you look at the insurance documents going back, it's 1347 when the first was documented on a specific vessel. So it's been recognized that you really need that to protect the assets. With vessels carrying more than 80% of the transported goods today, you can imagine that all of them will want marine insurance. And for the supply chain, it simply will stop if you don't have marine insurance as part of it. So it is fairly important, often forgotten unless you actually have an incident, but then you really know how important it is. And like I said, we're there to support that trade and the shipping industry.
So how does the move to decarbonize shipping, how does that play into the industry, and what are the regulatory pressures you're facing?
Well, I mean, climate change is the big one today. It's a driver for a lot of things, whether it's recruitment or people, the younger generation are really sort of into it, but it's also a necessity that we do need to do something and take our responsibility, and all sectors of industry need to sort of take that seriously, as does marine insurance. We don't, as an industry, pollute or being directly involved in that, but we're involved in the activities, and as I said, we're there to support the owners, and what we already see is some increase in weather-related catastrophes that goes directly into the marine insurance industry, that picks up sort of the claims that comes out of that one. And the potential impact, obviously, for all regulators is fundamental. If you look at international shipping, it's responsible for about 3% of the global greenhouse gas emissions today. It was left out of the Paris Agreement on climate change, but there was a clear expectation that this should be dealt with by the industry themselves. And within shipping, we have the international, or the United Nations body, the International Maritime Organization. So they came up with an initial strategy in 2018. And the ambition right now is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by about 50% within 2050. But it will be revised in a couple of years in 2026, and then we'll see whether they can move a bit further. There was just a meeting in the Maritime Environmental Protection Committee where they did some interim measures and sort of They haven't really gotten to the large one yet, but there are very, very clear expectations on what's going to happen going forward, and we're certainly monitoring and keeping a keen eye on that to see what we can do to support it. So I think the expectations are there will be more coming out of the IMO in the coming years, and possibly from some regional bodies as well.
So that's a pretty ambitious target, 50% by 2050, and I can see why they have the the interim targets so that you don't wait towards the end and find out that you're not gonna make it. So I mean, what do you see as the obstacles to achieving the IMO emission reduction targets?
There are a couple. First of all, the IMO is consensus-based. So you have 174 member states, and they need to agree. So that's going to differ depending on, is it a coastal state with a long coastline? Is it a big flag state with a lot of shipping companies that will have an interest? Is it a developing country? And that is a big issue, whether, I mean, they're trying to get economic growth. And will they be as interested in this as a topic if that sort of comes in the way of the economic growth that they really need? So that's one of the discussions that's going on at the moment. And then you have a couple of others. One is related to the infrastructure. You need to get that up to scale. And that ends up in a bit of a chicken and egg discussion. I mean, ammonia is out there available. Green ammonia is mentioned as one of those most probable fuels we'll be using in the future. And it's there, but to scale it up, that takes a lot of investments, and you need to have your customers there, and then the customers say, well, we can't really go that way unless the infrastructure is there, because you can't deviate to get that correct type of fuel for the vessel you rebuilt. And obviously it is very costly to invest, and I guess that's where the discussion is ongoing at the moment, where I think the owners are very eager to get some sort of market-based measures into it, whether it's going to be a CO2 bunker levy, which is most commonly mentioned as one of those, to close that gap and have the early movers that incentive to do the investment. It will be more expensive in the future, but you also need to rebuild the vessels. And not all vessels will be new, so that's the last one where there could be a question even on the capacity at shipyards. We're looking at 56,000 merchant vessels. They have a life expectancy of 25 to 30 years. And obviously it's too late for some. They've just sort of had a new build. So in 2050, if you do the math, you really need to make a decision today to get to that point. And we don't really know what's going to be available out there. So probably you will have a lot of refitting that needs to be done. And as long as you don't really know what the solution is going to be for the future, everyone is sitting a bit on the fence. It's difficult to invest in a new expensive vessel if you don't know where to go. And then it might be a capacity problem at the shipyards at the end of the day as well. So to have solutions and the knowledge on what to expect as soon as possible is going to be very, very important to the owners, I think, going forward. So it's not an easy road we're looking at.
Yeah, I think you've definitely given us that clear impression of all the different things that have to come together. And certainly, I did a lot of work at the WTO, and as I understand how difficult it is to make consensus-based bodies move. And like you said, different members are going to have different interests.
Yeah. And they've already had that discussion on whether to exempt certain countries, or whether certain ship segments should be exempted or trade should be exempted. It has been sort of a total no, we won't do it discussion so far, but I don't think it's been part, so it will come back again, and who knows where that's going to end up in the end. But certainly one of the challenges, yeah.
Well, definitely if there's a way to align environmental goals with competitiveness goals, that seems like a way to get folks to move quicker.
Yeah, I think the market-based measure is going to be key going forward. Technology is there, so they're just waiting for someone to be willing to put that bill. And you have some companies stepping up, but they'll be, if you lose in the competition, because someone else that didn't do the investment, they'll take that trade from you. So that means that the end consumer is going to be quite important, and the cargo owners will be important. So it will need sort of their support to look at the entire chain as well.
So, given this multivariate equation, let's add in marine insurance and AAMI's role.
Yep.
So what's the role of the industry in the transition to decarbonizing the shipping industry?
Well, I think we've taken a very clear stance that we will not penalize. We will go with them through the transition. For us, it's a challenge because we're talking about new risks. And anyone who's been involved in marine insurance or insurance as such will know that what we look at is history. We look at loss records to understand a risk and know how to price it. And here we're looking at something that might be different. And as I mentioned, ammonia, as that is sort of emerging as something that we're likely to see much more of, it's highly toxic. So when pushing an environmental goal, there is a risk to the crew on board. And we have a voice in that to make it even possible from our side. So we'd rather work with the regulatory authorities. We work with the IMO, we talk to the class societies, and then we ask the questions, how are we going to solve this? Do we need to change the regulation to make that happen, to move towards the goal that we have on decarbonization? So that's one very clear role that we're taking, and through the AAMI policy forum that I'm chairing at the moment, we work a lot on discussions with different stakeholders on that, and it's obviously an interest of the owners as well to have that voice. And it is simply to make it possible to move with them on the transition. It also represents new opportunities. So we can look at it, can expand, change the products that we're selling. It's not necessarily when you look at shipping itself, but an example with the offshore wind and the floating production facilities, we don't have products to deliver to those today. So we need to develop those and be really sort of stepping up on that. Or if you want to repair a vessel at a shipyard that's more sort of sustainable and where it is, that we could sort of offer those type of products. So that's another one, and that goes to more to the national associations and not AAMI as such on the clauses, but we do a lot of that from the Nordic market and C4 as well. And there is a role in having a conversation and a discussion and an understanding of the risks, where an international body such as AAMI have the opportunity to educate the membership. So you compensate, if you like, for the fact that you don't have the loss records. Then we need transparency. We need to talk to the manufacturers. We need to talk to the class societies. We need to talk to the owners and understand the risk. And through that, it will be easier to provide cover as well to the owners to compensate for it. And I think that's the ambition and the willingness we're looking at. And as we gain experience, we will have a bit more of the larger numbers, so we can bring in loss prevention initiatives going back to the owners and say, listen, you may not have a problem, but someone else had, so what if you do this and that? And it could help and make it safer and better to move through that transitional phase. So through all of these, we will have a role, and then directly there is a challenge to marine insurers today to be more transparent. So the financial authorities are coming up with requirements that we need to report on the portfolio that we insure. And I think we'll see a lot more. We've seen it with the banks on Poseidon principles, and you will see the same developments from insurers as well. That might push the slowest movers within segments more than anything else. I don't think you'll find us saying we're walking away entirely from a segment or a risk, but you might not be too interested in the slower movers. So that will again benefit those that's early on and taking this on board. So hopefully we'll be able to join in a conversation and have that transparency with the other stakeholders, and through that help them to actually go into this area by us taking on part of the risk for them.
Yeah, and the transparency trend is here as well. The Securities and Exchange Commission in the U.S. has a proposed rule to require, climate risk disclosures. So So I would imagine that, this is not going to be unique. It sounds like a lot of dialogue throughout the supply chain is going to be necessary to make sure that you're not just dealing with yesterday's risks, but you're predicting tomorrow's risks as well. And so I guess, based on that conversation, how do you think things are going? And do you think that shipping is going to be able to achieve, the race to zero by mid-century? And what do you think the impact on global supply chains might be?
Yeah, the race to zero. Now, at the moment, they're down to 50% on greenhouse gas emissions. Ambition. And then we're going to double that. And we already know that that's supposed to be from 2008, and we're already moving in the wrong direction. So, but then again, 2050 is a long time away. So I'll be optimistic and say that yes. But not entirely, I think. And we might have, I think a large proportion will be there. There is so many different initiatives ongoing at the moment. So it is moving very fast. But I think that will depend on whether they manage to get those market-based initiatives in place. Because you do need that to move to a certain place. And then shipping has, even though I'm saying will capacity be a problem at the end, where you can just put down a regulation and say you need to comply, and then everyone is lining up to get that retrofitting or that new build, and there won't be capacity for it. I don't think anyone will allow supply chains to totally stop or be completely disrupted if that ends up as one of those consequences, it moving too slowly. But I do think a large proportion will get there by 2050, and they're doing their part. And it's interesting to hear how much change just within the last 3 or 4 years. It's been a massive change, but some will be lagging behind. So that's why I'm a bit not sure if everyone will get there in time, but we will certainly have a big change going forward, and we do need that level playing field ideally to make it happen as well. But I think we might see regional regulations that will be at the forefront, and that's a challenge with a global industry. But the European Union are already saying that we will be moving forward. The US has already shown on other initiatives that they're willing to sort of take a lead and say, right, if you want to come to the US with a vessel, you need to comply so and so. We can't wait for the IMO. So we're probably going to see quite a lot of those initiatives that will push the IMO in the end into making the global regulation on this very important area. Whether everyone will be there in time for 2050, I'm not sure. I'll be in my elderly home and watching it with interest, I think.
Well, it sounds like a lot has to go right, and like you said, there could be differences in regulation between countries and regions, and the level playing fields is going to be obviously critically important, but also some cause for optimism.
Yep.
So I will also be in the same place, watching this as well. Bated breath for the fate of my children are 4 and 6, so this is a critical issue for me as well. So, but thank you so much, Helle. Really appreciate your coming on, and looking forward to continuing the discussion as things develop.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully everyone will have a better view of marine insurance as part of this.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming on, and that's it for this edition of Supply Chain University. You can find this and all of our videos at steptoe.com. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time.